Why was the forest so silent that day? Why did the trees seem to whisper warnings as if they knew something was about to happen? The hiker, a man named Daniel, had been walking through the dense green of Madagascar's wild terrain when he heard a sound that froze him in place. It was not the cry of a bird, not the growl of a predator. It was something far more haunting. A desperate, broken sound. It was the cry of a mother fossa. Daniel paused, his heart racing. He had read about these elusive creatures before. Apex predators of the island, swift hunters, feared by lemurs and respected by all. But he had never seen one this close, and never like this. The fossa stood on a rock, her head raised, calling out again and again. The cry was not just a call, it was grief, it was panic, it was the sound of loss. He whispered to himself, "What's happening here? Why is she crying like that?" The forest gave no answer. Curiosity pulled him closer. He crouched behind a fallen tree, watching. The mother's golden-brown body trembled with every call. Her tail lashed against the ground, restless, frantic. Daniel followed her eyes and noticed the way she kept glancing toward a narrow gully where the earth dipped into shadows. Something had happened there. Then a chilling thought crossed his mind. Was her baby down there? The silence of the forest deepened. Even the birds had stopped calling, as if they too were waiting. Daniel's chest tightened. He was not here to interfere with wildlife, but how could he turn away from this? The cries clawed at his chest. The fossa paced, stepping dangerously close to the edge of the gully. She peered down, growled, then cried again, louder this time, almost as if begging for help. Daniel leaned forward and caught a glimpse of movement below, small, weak, struggling. His eyes widened. The baby. It had slipped down the slope, trapped between sharp rocks and roots, unable to climb back up. Its tiny claws scratched at the earth, sliding, panicking. Each time it tried to climb, the dirt crumbled away. The mother tried to reach down, but the drop was too steep. One wrong move, and she could fall too. Daniel felt a knot in his stomach. He whispered under his breath, "No, this can't end like this." But before he could act, another sound shook the forest. A low growl. From the other side of the trees, a shadow moved. Another predator had been watching. The question now burned hotter in Daniel's mind. Would the mother save her baby before the predator made its move? Or would something even more shocking unfold? The forest was no longer calm. It felt alive, watching, waiting. Daniel pressed his back against the rough bark of a tree, holding his breath. His eyes darted between the mother fossa, pacing at the gully's edge, and the faint shadow moving just beyond the bushes. He could not yet see what creature lurked there, but its presence was undeniable. Every instinct in him told him the fossa was not only grieving for her trapped baby, but also preparing to defend it against an unseen danger. The baby's cries grew sharper, echoing from the gully walls like tiny knives cutting through the silence. It clawed desperately at the rocks, tiny paws trembling, sliding again and again into the loose soil. Each slip sent pebbles tumbling into the depths below, making Daniel's chest tighten with dread. He leaned forward, squinting into the gully, trying to judge how deep it was. If the cub fell further, there might be no return. The mother's cries suddenly shifted into a snarl, low, guttural, vibrating with rage. Daniel followed her gaze, and at that moment the shadow revealed itself. Emerging from the undergrowth was a mongoose, not the harmless, small kind that chased insects, but a giant striped mongoose, nearly the size of the fossa cub itself. Its yellow eyes glistened as it crept forward, teeth bared. Daniel's heart sank. He had read about these animals. Opportunists. They attacked weak or trapped prey, and this baby cub stranded in the gully was as vulnerable as it could be. The mother fossa leapt forward, tail whipping in warning, standing tall between the gully and the predator. Her growl deepened, echoing through the trees like a challenge. The mongoose stopped, but didn't retreat. Instead, it circled slowly, testing her. Its sharp claws tore at the ground as it moved. Daniel could feel his pulse hammering in his ears. He whispered, "No, no, not now." His hands clenched into fists. He had promised himself never to interfere directly with wild predators. But if this turned into a fight, the baby might not survive the chaos. The cub whimpered again. The mother turned her head just for a moment to glance down at her baby, and that was all the mongoose needed. In a blur of motion, it lunged. The attack was swift, brutal. The mother leapt sideways, her body twisting mid-air. Her claws raked across the mongoose's face, a furious strike that forced it to the ground. Dust and leaves exploded around them as the two predators clashed. The mother's roars shook the forest, but the mongoose was relentless, biting and clawing, snapping at her neck. Daniel gritted his teeth, torn between watching and acting. He felt useless, like the trees themselves, silent witnesses to a battle of survival. The cubs screamed again from the gully, thrashing in fear. The sound pierced the chaos like a knife, and Daniel realized something horrifying. The fight was not only endangering the mother, it was shaking the loose soil near the edge. Each violent lunge, each impact, sent clumps of earth cascading into the gully. The cub's perch was eroding. If this continued, the baby would slip deeper into the chasm. Daniel's breath came heavy. His instincts screamed at him, "Do something!" But his mind hesitated. If he revealed himself, the mother might turn on him too, seeing him as another threat. And yet to stand by while the cub slipped into death felt unbearable. The mongoose shrieked, leaping again. The mother caught it with her teeth, shaking it violently before slamming it against the ground. Daniel flinched at the sound of bones cracking. The mongoose twitched, stumbled, and then staggered back into the undergrowth, defeated. The mother stood trembling, chest heaving, her fur torn and bleeding in streaks, but her victory was short-lived. A sudden rumble echoed from the earth below. The baby cub had lost its grip. With a final, pitiful cry, it slid further down the gully, disappearing into the shadowy depth. Daniel's stomach dropped. He rushed forward before thinking, his boots crunching on the forest floor. The mother turned sharply, her eyes blazing, teeth bared. For a heartbeat, man and beast locked eyes. Daniel froze, his hands raised slightly, whispering, "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." The mother's body stiffened, but she didn't attack. Instead, she gave a desperate growl and looked back at the gully. Daniel followed her gaze and saw the cub still clinging, but far lower now, trapped between two jagged rocks. Its tiny chest rose and fell rapidly. It was alive, but not for long. The slope was steep, littered with roots and loose earth. To climb down would be dangerous. To do nothing would be cruel. "Damn it," Daniel muttered under his breath. He looked around quickly, spotting a thick branch lying near the forest floor. He grabbed it, testing its strength, then slowly approached the gully's edge. The mother hissed, her claws scraping against the ground, but her growl softened when she saw him lower the branch toward the cub. "Come on. Hold on," Daniel whispered, sweat dripping from his temple. He pushed the branch downward, close to where the cub struggled. The little one looked up, its frightened eyes locking with his. For a moment the forest stilled. Then with trembling paws, the cub reached out. The branch slipped. Daniel's heart jumped. He steadied it, pushing it closer. The cub tried again, its claws scraping against the wood. It clung tightly, but its tiny body dangled precariously. Daniel gritted his teeth and pulled upward, inch by inch. The soil crumbled under his boots. His arms burned. The cub whimpered but held on. Behind him, the mother paced anxiously, her cries softening, as if she understood. But just as Daniel began to pull the cub toward safety, another twist ripped through the silence, a new growl, deeper, harsher, from the opposite side of the trees. Daniel froze, his arms locked around the branch. Slowly he turned his head. Emerging from the shadows was not another mongoose, but something far worse, a feral dog. Its ribs jutted out, its fur matted, its eyes wild with hunger. Abandoned or born in the wild, packs of these dogs roamed the edges of villages and forests, often attacking weakened animals. This one had clearly caught the scent of blood, its muzzle wrinkled, teeth glistening with saliva. The mother Fossa stiffened, her tail lashing, ready to fight again despite her wounds. Daniel's pulse raced faster. He muttered, "Not now. Please, not now." He couldn't let go of the branch, not when the cub still hung between life and death. The dog lowered its body, preparing to lunge. The cub whimpered again. The mother snarled. Daniel's arms trembled as he fought to lift the tiny creature. The forest On Silent, now felt like it was holding its breath for the second time that day. Who would make the next move? The mother, the stranger, or the predator that had just entered the scene? And more importantly, would the cub live long enough to see its mother again? The standoff felt endless. The wild dog's growl rolled through the forest like distant thunder, each sound shaking Daniel's nerves. The animal's eyes glowed with hunger and fury, fixed on the wounded Mother Fossa, who was already limping from her fight with the mongoose. Her breathing was ragged, her ears flattened against her head. Yet her stance remained firm. She would fight until her last breath for her cub. Daniel's body was locked in place, arms trembling as he balanced the long branch with the cub clinging tightly to it. His boots dug into the soil at the gully's edge, dirt shifting beneath him. He whispered through clenched teeth, "Just a little higher. Hold on, baby, hold on." The cub mewed weakly, its paws slipping on the smooth bark, tiny claws barely holding, but Daniel couldn't split his focus. The dog lowered its shoulders, its muscles rippling under its filthy fur as it crept closer. Every slow step it took crushed dry leaves beneath its paws. The sound was deafening to Daniel's ears. The dog's eyes occasionally darted to him, and he realized with a jolt that he wasn't safe either. The Mother Fossa hissed, tail lashing in wide arcs. Her body trembled, but her eyes burned with raw determination. She crouched low, ready to strike, but Daniel knew one truth. If the dog lunged, the Fossa wouldn't last long. Her body had already endured one battle, and blood dripped from her shoulder into the soil. Daniel swallowed hard. "Think, Daniel, think." His voice was a harsh whisper. The cub's cry jolted him back. Its grip was slipping, claws screeching along the branch. He had no choice but to pull it up now, predator or not. With all his strength, he hauled upward, grunting through clenched teeth. The cub rose, inch by inch, clinging desperately. The branch creaked, but Daniel kept pulling. Behind him, the growl rose into a snarl. The dog was preparing to strike. "Come on, just a little more," Daniel groaned. His arms quaked as the cub scrambled closer to the top. Its tiny body tumbled onto the soil at the edge, landing with a soft thud. For a heartbeat, Daniel exhaled in relief. The cub was safe from the gully, but he had no time to celebrate. The dog lunged. A blur of fur and teeth shot through the air, jaws open wide. Daniel stumbled back instinctively, falling onto the ground with the branch still in his hands. The Mother Fossa launched forward at the same instant, colliding with the dog mid-leap. Their bodies slammed together in a violent crash that shook the undergrowth. The cub squealed, crawling clumsily toward its mother, but Daniel scooped it into his arms without thinking. He froze. The cub's tiny body squirmed against his chest, its heart hammering so fast he could feel it through his shirt. He whispered, "Shh, it's okay. You're safe now." But even as he spoke, he knew safety was far from reach. The fight was brutal. The dog's weight dwarfed the Fossa's, and it pinned her down, snapping at her neck. She twisted, slashing with her claws, but her movements were sluggish. Daniel's throat tightened as he watched. If this continued, she wouldn't survive. For the first time, Daniel shouted out loud, "Hey!" His voice echoed through the forest. The dog paused for half a second, startled by the sudden human noise. That was all the mother needed. With a final surge of strength, she twisted free, clawing across the dog's muzzle. Blood sprayed. The dog howled in rage, snapping blindly. Daniel's pulse thundered. He looked at the cub in his arms and then back at the fight. He couldn't just stand there. Dropping the branch, he grabbed a stone the size of his fist from the ground. His hand shook, but his aim was steady. With a desperate grunt, he hurled it at the dog. The rock struck its flank with a dull thud. The animal yelped, spinning toward him, teeth bared, eyes wild. Daniel's breath caught. He had just drawn the beast's full attention. The mother, though wounded, didn't waste the chance. She launched herself onto the dog's back, claws digging into its flesh. The forest erupted with snarls, growls, and the sound of thrashing bodies. Daniel clutched the cub tightly, backing away toward the nearest tree, but the danger was far from over. The rustle of bushes behind him made his blood run cold. He turned sharply, and his stomach sank. Another dog emerged. this one thinner but equally dangerous, its ribs stretching under its skin. Then another, and another. A pack. Daniel's mind screamed, there are more of them. The first dog struggled under the mother Fossa's assault, snapping back at her. But the pack that arrived wasn't interested in helping. It was hungry, drawn by the smell of blood and weakness. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, and their low growls joined into a chilling chorus. Daniel hugged the cub closer. "No, not like this," he whispered. The mother Fossa, sensing the greater danger, backed away from the first dog, limping heavily. She positioned herself in front of Daniel and the cub, snarling with renewed fury. Her body shook, blood staining her fur, but her spirit refused to yield. The pack circled. Step by step they closed in, tongues lolling, teeth flashing. Daniel's mind raced. He was unarmed, cornered, holding a fragile life in his hands. There was no way to outrun them. The cub whimpered softly, burying its tiny head against his chest. The sound nearly broke Daniel. He clenched his jaw, whispering, "I have to protect you, somehow." The dogs lowered themselves, ready to pounce. The mother tensed, her tail thrashing violently. The forest felt suffocating, the tension crushing, and then an unexpected sound broke through the chaos. A whistle, high-pitched, sharp, human. The dogs froze, ears twitching. Daniel's eyes widened. From the far side of the clearing, a figure appeared. A ranger dressed in earth-toned clothing, carrying a long stick and a slung rifle. His face was stern, his voice commanding as he whistled again. The pack of dogs hesitated, their eyes flicking between the wounded Fossa, the stranger holding her cub, and the approaching human. The ranger shouted something in Malagasy, clapping his hands loudly. The dogs snarled, uncertain, but hunger battled fear in their minds. One of them barked sharply, but another whimpered and backed away. Daniel's chest heaved in relief, but his mind spun with questions. Who was this man? Why was he here? And would he see Daniel as a rescuer, or as someone interfering where he shouldn't? The ranger stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he saw Daniel holding the cub. The whistle dangled from his lips as he studied the scene. The wounded mother Fossa, the snarling pack, and the terrified man clutching a baby predator. The dogs hadn't fully retreated. Their hunger still kept them circling, watching. The ranger raised his rifle, not to fire but to scare. He cocked it, the metallic sound sharp in the stillness. The dogs flinched, and slowly, one by one, they began slinking back into the forest. Their growls faded into the distance until only silence remained. The clearing was still again. The air smelled of blood, sweat, and earth. Daniel slowly lowered the cub to the ground, watching as it wobbled forward on unsteady legs. The mother limped toward it, her eyes never leaving him. Her growls were weaker now, almost questioning. The ranger finally spoke, his voice deep and firm. "Why are you here?" His accent was thick, his tone not hostile but heavy with suspicion. Daniel swallowed, still kneeling. I was hiking. I found her crying for her baby. I couldn't just leave it." He gestured weakly toward the cub. The ranger's gaze flicked to the Fossa family and then back to Daniel. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a slow nod, he lowered his rifle. "You interfered," he said quietly, "but maybe you saved them." Daniel exhaled, his hands trembling, but the story was far from over. The mother was badly wounded, her cub weak, and the forest still held unseen dangers. And now, with the ranger stepping into the picture, Daniel realized the path ahead would be even more complicated than he thought. The question remained, would the bond of trust between man and beast grow? Or would fear and suspicion tear it apart before the night was over? The silence after the dog's retreat was almost unbearable. It wasn't peace. It was the heavy quiet that comes after violence, the kind of silence where every leaf's rustle felt like a warning. Daniel's chest heaved as he wiped sweat from his forehead, his heart still racing. The cub stumbled forward, pressing against its mother's side. She leaned down, nuzzling it weakly, her body trembling. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking. The ranger stood only a few steps away, rifle lowered but his eyes sharp, never leaving Daniel. The Fossa mother gave a low growl, not at the ranger but at Daniel. as if reminding him that trust had not yet been earned. Daniel raised his hands slowly, speaking softly. "I didn't mean harm. I swear, I just couldn't watch it die." His voice cracked, heavy with exhaustion. The ranger tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "This forest is not your playground," he said firmly. His accent wrapped around the words steady and controlled. "Here, life and death are balanced. When man interferes, the balance breaks." Daniel swallowed. He wanted to defend himself, to say that he hadn't come here to interfere, but the truth was clear. He had interfered. Still, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. He looked down at the cub, now mewling softly at its mother's side, alive only because he had acted. The ranger sighed, glancing at the wounded mother. Blood stained her fur, and her movements were stiff, shaky. "She will not survive the night like this," he muttered. "The wounds will fester. Infection will spread." Daniel's head snapped up. "We can help her, can't we?" His voice was urgent, almost pleading. The ranger's gaze hardened. "Wild animals are not pets. They are not ours to save. Nature decides. But look at her." Daniel's voice rose before he could stop it. The mother Fossa stumbled, her legs nearly giving out before regaining her footing. She fought off a mongoose, then those dogs. She's still standing. She's fighting to live. If we just walk away, we're leaving her to die. And the cub, too. The ranger studied him for a long moment. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. Finally, he spoke quietly. "There is a place, not far from here. A small rescue station. We do not bring every animal there, only those with a chance. If she accepts our help, maybe." His words trailed off as his eyes narrowed on Daniel. "But you must understand, if she turns on us, we cannot fight her. We must let her choose." Daniel nodded quickly, relief flooding him. "Then let's do it." "Let's try." The ranger didn't move immediately. Instead, he crouched slowly, his movements measured. He pulled something from a pouch on his belt, a strip of cloth soaked in herbs. He held it out, the scent strong, earthy, sharp. "This will calm her pain," he explained. "But only if she lets us near." The mother Fossa's golden eyes locked on him, pupils narrow, tail lashing. Her cub pressed close, whining softly. She gave a warning growl, low and rumbling, as the ranger inched forward. Daniel held his breath, every muscle tense. The ranger spoke softly in Malagasy, words Daniel couldn't understand, but the tone was soothing, rhythmic. Slowly, he placed the herb-soaked cloth on the ground, not reaching closer. The Fossa sniffed the air, her nostrils flaring. She didn't move forward, but she didn't retreat either. Minutes crawled by. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the mother stepped closer, dragging her injured leg, and sniffed the cloth. She growled once, weakly, then collapsed beside it, her cub pressing against her chest. Daniel exhaled in disbelief. She trusts you." The ranger shook his head. "She doesn't trust. She accepts. There is a difference." His eyes flicked to Daniel. "Help me. We must carry her." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Carry her? You mean pick her up?" The ranger gave a short nod. "She is weak. She will not resist now. But be ready. If she wakes too quickly, she will strike." The idea of lifting a predator, even a wounded one, made Daniel's blood run cold. Yet as he looked at the cub, wide-eyed and trembling, and the mother broken but unyielding, he found himself nodding. "He'd tell me what to do." The ranger pulled out a length of rough cloth and gestured for Daniel to hold one end. Together, they fashioned a makeshift sling. Slowly, cautiously, they slid it beneath the mother's body. She stirred, growling faintly, but the herb's scent seemed to dull her strength. Daniel's heart pounded as her weight settled onto the sling. "Lift," the ranger ordered. Daniel grunted as they heaved her up. The sling swayed, the cub whimpering and following at their feet. Each step was agonizing, the forest floor uneven, roots snagging their boots. Daniel's arms ached, but he didn't dare falter. As they moved deeper into the trees, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching them. The forest was too quiet again. He glanced around nervously. "You sure the dogs won't come back?" The ranger's jaw tightened. Dogs are cowards in the light. But when night falls, hunger makes them brave. "We must hurry." Daniel swallowed hard, gripping the sling tighter. The thought of facing that pack again, in the dark, with their hands full of a bleeding predator, was almost too much to bear. They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds their strained breathing and the cub's soft cries. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long across the forest floor. Daniel's muscles screamed with every step. Sweat drenched his shirt, stinging his eyes, but he kept moving. He had to. Finally, the ranger whispered, "We are close." Daniel looked ahead and saw nothing but dense trees and thick vines. "Close to what?" The ranger didn't answer. He pushed aside a curtain of vines, revealing a narrow path almost invisible to the eye. "Here," he said simply. They followed the path, winding through the undergrowth until the forest opened into a small clearing. In the center stood a hut of wood and thatch, smoke curling faintly from a chimney. Cages and enclosures surrounded it, some empty, some filled with injured birds or small lemurs. Daniel blinked in surprise. "This is your station?" The ranger nodded. "Sanctuary. Small, but enough." They carried the mother inside, laying her gently on a bed of leaves and cloth. The cub immediately climbed onto her, nuzzling into her fur. The sight made Daniel's throat tighten again. He wiped his face with his sleeve, exhausted but relieved. But relief didn't last long. The ranger examined the wounds carefully, his brow furrowed. "Deep. She has lost much blood. Infection will spread fast. If she does not fight, she will die." Daniel's chest clenched. "There's got to be something we can do. Medicine, stitches, anything." The ranger cut him off sharply. "This is not your world. Here survival is earned, not given. We will try, but you must be ready. The cub may lose its mother." The words hit Daniel like a stone. He glanced at the cub, curled against its mother's chest, unaware of the danger. His fists clenched. "No, I won't accept that. We have to save her." The ranger gave him a long look, then slowly nodded. "Then be ready to fight with me. Night is coming, and night brings more than dogs." Daniel's eyes widened. "More than dogs? What do you mean?" The ranger didn't answer. He only moved to the doorway, peering into the thickening shadows of the forest. His silence was more terrifying than any explanation. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, a new sound rose, a low, rumbling growl, deeper and heavier than the dog's. The cub stirred, whimpering. The mother raised her head weakly, ears twitching, her instincts screaming even as her body failed her. Daniel felt the air grow colder. His heart hammered as he whispered, "What else is out there?" The ranger's voice was low, grim. "Something that does not fear the dark. Something that hunts even the hunters." And just like that, Daniel realized their fight for survival was far from over. The night had only begun, and the real danger was still waiting. The forest was no longer silent. It was alive with tension, with the heartbeat of danger. Daniel's shirt clung to him, drenched in sweat, his hands trembling as he tried to steady himself. The mother Fossa stood frozen near the gully's edge, her eyes locked on her baby, who was still struggling below. But from the shadows, the predator drew closer, its growl echoing deeper, vibrating through the ground. Daniel's heart pounded. For a moment, time slowed. He could see the fear in the baby's eyes, hear the desperation in its claws, scratching against the dirt, and feel the terror in the air. The predator revealed itself, a massive boa constrictor, its scales glistening in the streaks of fading light. Its tongue flickered as it slithered closer, not toward Daniel, not toward the mother, but straight toward the helpless baby. The mother. Fossa let out a cry so piercing that even Daniel flinched. She crouched, ready to leap, but the risk was terrifying. One mistake, and both she and her baby would be lost forever. Daniel's mind raced. Do I step in? Or do I let nature take its course? He grabbed a long branch from the ground, his pulse hammering in his ears. He knew he couldn't fight a predator like this, not really, but he could at least create a distraction. With all his strength, Daniel hurled the branch toward the trees on the other side of the gully. It cracked loudly against the trunks, breaking the deadly silence. The boa's head snapped toward the sound, its coils pausing in eerie stillness. That brief hesitation was all the mother needed. She sprang, her body arched mid-air, claws out, landing inches from her baby. She nudged the small Fossa upward, urging it to climb with a desperate series of cries. The baby clawed at the roots, slipping, but the mother pressed beneath it, pushing with every ounce of strength. The boa turned back, realizing the trick, and in a terrifying rush, it lunged. Daniel gasped. The snake's body struck like lightning, its jaws missing the mother by a hair as she shoved her baby to the ledge. The little one scrambled onto safer ground, trembling but alive. The mother, however, was now cornered, the boa's coils tightening around her. For a moment it seemed the story would end in tragedy. Daniel stood frozen, powerless, his breath caught in his throat. But then something unexpected happened. From the branches above, a group of lemurs, silent watchers until now, erupted in a chorus of alarm calls. Their shrill cries filled the air as they leapt branch to branch, shaking the canopy, dropping sticks and debris onto the predator. The boa, startled and irritated, loosened its grip for just a second, and that second was enough. The mother twisted free, her claws raking against the snake's scales. She bounded upward, her baby pressed against her side. Together, they disappeared into the thick cover of the forest. The snake recoiled, defeated, slipping back into the shadows where it had come from. Daniel stood in awe, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his forehead. His hands shook not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming surge of relief. He had witnessed something extraordinary, not just a fight for survival, but an unbreakable bond, a reminder of the strength found in love and unity. As the forest calmed, the sounds of life returning, Daniel sat on the ground, his legs weak. He whispered to himself, this wasn't just about saving a life, it was about learning what life really means. He realized something powerful. In that moment, predators and prey, man and beast, all were connected by the same fragile thread of survival. Every cry, every choice, every act of courage carried weight. The mother Fossa didn't give up because she couldn't. The baby didn't stop fighting because it had hope. Even Daniel's small act of courage, throwing a branch, was enough to shift the outcome. And when the lemurs joined in, it proved that sometimes survival isn't just about strength, it's about unity, timing, and never surrendering to fear. Daniel finally rose, glancing one last time into the shadows of the forest. The mother and her baby were gone, safe somewhere deeper in the wilderness. He knew he would never see them again, but their story would remain with him forever. Moral lesson: life will always test us with impossible odds, moments where fear whispers that it's easier to give up. But courage isn't about being the strongest. It's about refusing to quit when it matters most. Like the mother Fossa, we fight for those we love. Like the baby, we cling to hope. And like the lemurs, we learn that together, even the weakest can change the ending of the story. Because survival is not only about living, it's about never giving up on what matters.